My friends, sometimes God seems far away. Sometimes he seems mysterious. Other times he might seem quite frightening. This was Moses' experience at the burning bush. The fire symbolizes God's otherworldliness. The fire is the least material of all things. It's like light. You can see it, but you can't touch it. It is burning in a bush, but the bush is not burned up. And this symbolizes that God's way of being is so different from ours. In fact, the name that God reveals to Moses emphasizes the same thing. I am who am. In other words, I am the one who exists independently of every other being. My friends, human existence is dependent. We come into the world through our parents. We are cared for by them. And even as adults, we need the support of greater society. We need the companionship of others. We are dependent creatures. God is independent. He simply is, from age to age. In fact, that name, the I am who am, can also be translated literally as the verb to be, being, right? Existence, okay? God has no need of anyone else. But this far awayness of God isn't the whole story. It's not even the most important part of the story. He may not need us, but he desires to be in relationship with us because God wants us to be close to him. And so the biblical scholars tell us that the Hebrew verb for being, used in God's name, I am, doesn't just mean existence in the abstract. It also means to be near, to be close. And so God came close to Moses and drew close to him. And my friends, today, Christ does the same thing in the Eucharist. And he does so even more so. So God tells Moses that he has heard the cry of his suffering people. Christ, too, is God's answer to the yearning of every human heart. It is his definitive answer. Christ is the one who cultivates the soil around our hearts as the gardener tends the fig tree in the parable. He wants our lives to bear fruit, a fruit of meaning, of peace, of happiness. So yes, my friends, God is far away because he's God. But he is also very, very close by because he loves us. And so the history of salvation is the history of God showing how much he cares. And my friends, we have all experienced God's closeness at one time or another in our lives, right? Yes, Father? You've heard the expression, hindsight is 20/20. Looking back, you can see all the different ways God has touched your lives, has lightened a path for you, right? So there's a beautiful little story that I'd like to share with you. Sally, she was a little girl who learned to experience the presence of God all the time. Now, Sally, she had to walk to school every day. She loved to skip along the sidewalk, looking at the flowers, saying hi to the neighbors and to the shopkeepers along the way. And one morning, the sky was somewhat cloudy and rain was in the forecast later in the day. But Sally, she still wanted to walk to school. And so her mother allowed her to do so, but had her take her umbrella just in case. Now, when school was over, Sally began her walk home, just like she did almost every day. And she was skipping along. The wind began to howl, and the raindrops started falling from the sky. And little Sally, she opens up her umbrella, and she continues on her way. And suddenly there was a bolt of lightning through the sky, followed by a roar of thunder. Now, Sally's mother quickly jumped into her car and drove the route that Sally walked to school. She was worried that Sally might be hurt by the storm or frightened by the noise and the flashing of the light, which was now occurring at regular intervals, several times a minute. Now, around the corner, Sally's mother sees her daughter walking along with her umbrella. And at each flash of the lightning, Sally would stop, she would look up at the sky, and she would smile. Now, Sally's mother watched Sally do this 3 or 4 times. Each time the lightning flashed, this would cause Sally to stop walking, look up at the sky, and smile. And finally, Sally's mother called out to her, "Sally, what on earth are you doing?" And Sally, she answers, "I'm smiling because God keeps taking pictures of me." Right? It's not just a cute story, it's a true story. In fact, the truth is even more amazing that God is always thinking of us, always loving us, always guiding us, always desiring to be in relationship with us. And he proves it by staying with us in the Eucharist. Now, at times, yes, God, he might seem to be far away because, after all, he is God. But we need to remember those moments like Sally, right? He's taken our picture. He's always there for us. He's so much closer than we realize because he is God, a God who loves, a God who cares. And so God is reminding us today that he desires to be in relationship with us. He is always thinking of us, listening to us, guiding us, just as he was with Moses, and just as he was and is in his Son, Jesus Christ. And my friends, that is a beautiful and comforting truth that we need to think about. We need to let that sink in and encourage us in those storms of life. Maybe we can be like Sally and look at the sky and smile and like, yes, God is taking my picture. But we should also think about all those people who don't know this truth or who don't believe it. For them, life is an even lonelier journey than it is for all of us. All they can do is hope for that someday they will stumble across the secret of happiness. But without discovering that God, the creator of all things, is at their side, thinking of them, guiding them, loving them, wanting to teach them and to forgive them and to lead them, without discovering that, they simply cannot find the happiness that they are looking for. You know, St. Augustine, he said it best, right? Our hearts are restless until they rest in you, O God. God wants them to discover that relationship. So how does he do that today? Well, my dear friends, he founded a church, right? And you are members of a church, right? So by default, that makes you messengers, right? And so Lent is a time that we should double our efforts to help those people around us. What greater gift could we give them than the knowledge of God's goodness and love? This is the good news of Jesus Christ. This is the good news of the gospel. And so we need to ask ourselves, who around me is lonely? Who around me is suffering? Who around me is searching? And how can I bring them this good news? How can I, through my words, my deeds, my actions, show them that God cares? My friends, Lent is a time of prayer. It is a time of fasting. It is a time of almsgiving. And I would like to propose that the greatest alms that we can give is the news that Jesus Christ, the creator of the universe, wishes to walk by our side because, after all, this is the greatest treasure we have. And it is a treasure that should not and cannot be hoarded just to ourselves. And so in this Mass, let's ask Jesus to show us the person he wants to bring this message to this week. Whoever is popping in your head, my friends, turn it into a prayer. And when we receive Jesus in Holy Communion, let's promise to be a faithful messenger.